The government is about to outlaw your church security training. If you're a prepper, they're about to shut down any professional training you're going to do with your prepper group. This is huge. There's a bill in Congress that's going to label your church security team as a paramilitary organization. This is all bad, people. I'm going to break the law down for you to show you exactly how you're about to become a criminal. Now, some people are going to say this isn't going to pass. Probably not. But if we're not educated and we don't go out and fight for our rights, this can severely hamper what we're doing to protect our churches, whether it's on purpose or they're just being dumb. Let's break it down and find out. All right, so I'm going to read you the introduction of what this bill is about. This comes from the senators and the senator and the congressman that put this together. These aren't my words. Don't get mad at the messenger, but I think it's super important to look at their intent and what they say. So there's the bill that they put forth, but let's look at their intentions. So the bill in question is the Preventing Private Paramilitary Activity Act, introduced by Senator Edward Markey, a Democrat from Massachusetts, and Congressman Jamie Raskin out of Maryland, following the anniversary of the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol. Again, their words, not mine. Don't get mad at me. This legislation aims to establish a federal prohibition on military groups through both civil and criminal enforcement mechanisms. It targets activities that intimidate state and local officials, interfere with government proceedings, impersonate law enforcement, and violate individuals' constitutional rights while acting as part of a private paramilitary organization. The bill specifically seeks to curb the operation of private militias and paramilitary groups by prohibiting publicly patrolling, drilling, engaging in harmful or deadly paramilitary techniques, interfering with government proceedings, infringing on others' constitutional rights, falsely assuming law enforcement roles, and training for such activities. A lot of you sent this to me by email, direct message. I love that you sent that to me. I have just been in a bad place and have been having a hard time keeping up with some of the stuff going on. I finally, this morning, I had a law enforcement class today. I felt good enough to do the class, and I had some time beforehand to read this bill. My Lord, we are in so much trouble, people. We need to pay attention to this. Let's break the law down. Let's go through it, not line by line, but I'm going to break out where it shows that you're going to become a criminal working for a church security team. Specifically, what they're going to amend is 18 of the United States Code, and they're going to add section 2742. What 2742 says is, as an offense under A, it shall be unlawful to knowingly, in a circumstance described in subsection B, while acting as part of or on behalf of a private paramilitary organization and armed with a firearm, explosive or incendiary device, or other dangerous weapon. What's important is to look at the definitions of what a paramilitary organization is. Your church security team is a paramilitary organization according to them. I know some of you that live behind enemy lines are going to look at this in here and say, well, I can't work with a firearm. But I have no doubt that you have a knife or something else to protect yourself. That is going to be that other dangerous weapon. And so it could cause a lot of problems here. So let's talk about definitions. Let's go down to the definition section. We're going to look at the definition of a private paramilitary organization under section 9. The term private paramilitary organization means any group of 3 or more persons associating under a command structure for the purpose of functioning in public or training to function in public as a combat support, law enforcement, or security services unit. You are a security services unit. So now we've established, and now let's back up even more. In a group of 3 or more. Now, most of you belong to a church security team that has more than 3 people. It doesn't matter 3 on at the same time. You just have 3 people. And if you go out and train, you're now a paramilitary organization. And most of us have some kind of a structure for command. We have somebody that's in charge, either officially or unofficially. That's us. Let's go down to subsection 1, and that one is publicly patrol. Hold on, let's look at publicly for a minute. This is our nation putting forth a law for the United States, the greatest nation in the entire world, and they can't spell publicly right. People, these are the people making our laws. We should be a little upset. Okay? Publicly patrol, drill, or engage in techniques capable of causing bodily injury or death. We're training with firearms and we're training to stop an active shooter. That meets section 1. Okay? 3, section 3, interfere with or intimidate another person in that person's exercise of any right under the Constitution of the United States. Seems simple enough until you worked in law enforcement like me for 30 years. I'm actually on my 35th year. 30 years as a cop on the street, 5 years training full-time law enforcement. When you look at that section, you are interfering with the constitutional rights of somebody. If somebody kidnaps another person, let's say they kidnap a child out of Sunday school services. Let's say it's a man beating his wife. Let's say it's a man doing some other dangerous thing and you're trying to stop them. You're keeping them from exercising their civil liberties of moving forward. You're detaining them. You're keeping them from moving somewhere. That is that section. Section 4, assume the functions of a law enforcement officer, peace officer, or public official, whether or not acting under the cover of law, and thereby assert authority or purport to assert authority over another person without the consent of that person, or trained to engage in activity described in paragraphs 1 through 4. You're training to stop people from committing crimes at the church. If somebody commits a burglary, if they vandalize the church, you're going to stop them and detain them so law enforcement can get there. That's what we do. It's our right to protect the church, but now you're a paramilitary organization and you're meeting all these things so far. This is scary to me that my government is doing this. Let's look under circumstances, okay? Section B, circumstances. The circumstance described in this subsection or that the conduct described in A1 involves. So you have to do another thing here, because if you're doing this stuff in your state, the federal government doesn't have jurisdiction. This is where the government's going to get their jurisdiction. Section 2 involves a firearm, explosive or incendiary device or dangerous weapon that is traveled in interstate or foreign commerce. Your gun, even if it was made in your state, it went to a distributor and you went to your FFL and then they purchased it from the distributor. Even if, like, let's say you made an 80%er and you carried that and it was made within the state, the government doesn't have jurisdiction right now, okay? Unless you bought parts that came from somewhere else, then they'll get you there. But here we go, ammunition. Involves the use of ammunition or a large capacity ammunition feeding device, your magazine, that is traveled in interstate or foreign commerce. So your magazines or your ammunition, even like here in Idaho, we have CCI up in Lewiston. Shout out to my homies there. If the ammunition that I buy, it's manufactured, it goes to a distributor, and then I get it, so it goes out of state and comes back. That's how they get you, is now it's that interstate commerce. This is what the federal government does all the time. There are some exceptions to this law, though. Okay, so let's talk about those exceptions to see if we meet any of those exceptions, okay? Subsection A, number 1, Armed Forces of the United States, the National Guard, Naval Militia, any regularly organized state militia, or any unorganized or reserve militia called into service by a state or the United States. Not you. Let's go to section 2, see if that's us. A group of individuals who associate as a military organization solely for the purpose of historical reenactment or study. Man, that's not us. B, parade in public as part of a bona fide veterans organization with no intent to engage in the activities prohibited by subsection A. Still not us. 3, students in an educational institution authorized by the federal government or state to teach military science as prescribed, part of the course of instruction when under the supervision of a military instructor. Definitely not us. Here we go, last one. Okay, let's see if we meet the exception. Members of an organization that is authorized under federal or state law to provide paramilitary, law enforcement, or security services training, or to engage in paramilitary activity, law enforcement, or security services when performing the functions authorized by law, and in the case of paramilitary activity and law enforcement functions, when under the direction and control of a governmental authority. So apparently I need government permission to have a church security team and be under their control. You cannot make this stuff up. Your church security team does not meet any of the exemptions. So you are a paramilitary organization. We've proven that. And the penalty, 1 year in jail, a fine, or both. You're gonna get both, 100%. I am deeply concerned about this. I know other YouTubers have put information out about this, but I'm putting it in the context of church security. You're it. You meet the definition. You should be calling your senator and your representatives and telling them that this is ridiculous. Look at what happened in California. California passed a law that prohibited concealed carry in churches. It got revoked, reinstated. We're going back and forth. I can't even keep track of where we're at. But they are slowly dismantling our ability to protect churches when we're on the cusp of being attacked. I've been putting out information about that too. How are we going to protect our churches against all these threats that I keep telling you about? If you want to know more about the crime that's occurring at churches, get my newsletter. Every week I put out information about crime that occurs at churches. There is always, every week, there's violent crime at churches. There is not 1 week that I've been putting this newsletter out that there hasn't been violent crime. How are we supposed to protect our churches if the government takes that ability away from us? I want you to leave here and pray for discernment, pray for help, and pray that our legislators stop acting this way and start acting in our best interest. Do me a favor, leave a comment. Let me know what you think. A lot of you visit here, but never hit the follow button. Like us, subscribe to us, follow us. It helps a lot. I really appreciate it if you do that. And lastly, remember your ABCs. Always be caring.